I think people get tattooed because, you know, there's not a lot of real stuff left in the world. And it's all like a 24-hour news cycle. Nothing lasts. With tattooing, it's blood, it's pain, it's permanence. And when you get that needle in your skin for the first time, you have to be there. You can't just call it in. You have to sit there and take the pain. And then sit there and heal it. And then you gotta live with the consequences of your action. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to talk a little bit about tradition, what it means to me, and what my take on tradition is. The word gets used a lot, right? Traditional tattoos, traditional everything, right? You got traditional American tattoos, traditional Japanese tattoos, traditional tribal tattoos. The word does get used a lot, and I think because it gets used a lot, it loses a little bit of its meaning. Now, again, just my opinion. Some of these will probably be very unpopular, but, you know, too bad. For me, tradition means doing things the way they were done before because they work, right? And it has a ritualistic aspect to it as well. You're doing things in the old ways to follow a tradition set forth by your ancestors. Not necessarily your blood ancestors, but your craft ancestors. So if the tattoo masters of the day 200 years ago did a thing a particular way, that got passed down to their successors, and they perpetuated that same thing in the same manner, say making ink or wrapping needles or drawing things a certain way, and then that got passed down to their ancestors and so on and so forth. By carrying on this tradition, you are fulfilling a ritual. You are doing things in a certain way to honor the people who came before you. Because they work, but also because it gives you a connection to the past, right? So I try, and this isn't just about me, but I'm the subject of the talk, so I'll talk about how it relates to what I do. You know, so say for making the sumi ink and stuff, you know, I try and do things in the traditional way. I use a stone, I grind by hand. I used to use a machine when I first switched to sumi. I have a machine I imported from Japan that the calligraphers use that grinds the ink in a mechanical kind of way. I had to wean myself off that. My apprentice grinds my ink now, but it's done by hand, right? Which is more time consuming, but more traditional. With the needles, you know, like for tsubori specifically, make them by hand. Look, with the machine needles, I made all my own needles probably till about 2012, 2010, before I started really getting into pre-mades. And I'd like to, and this is all just me making it, I'd like to go back to making all my liner needles by hand. I have all the stuff here. And maybe I will, because I'm going to call myself out for being a hypocrite, where I'm espousing one thing but not actually doing it. Because I'm about to call out some other shit here. All the guys making, you know, that call themselves traditional tattooers, who, you know, again, I'm not shitting anybody. I understand people have time constraints and stuff, but if we're talking about the true purest essence of what tradition means, it means not drawing on a fucking iPad, right? It means not using a wand machine to do traditional tattoos. It means not using cartridges to do traditional tattoos, right? Even if we can't be perfect, and I'm certainly not, we should at least aspire to the highest level of tradition that we are capable, given our time constraints and our lives, right? Because as craftsmen, you know, it's a choice how much you dedicate your life to making your craft, right? I'm a father of 3. I also run a farm. I also run a business, right? But I go out of my way to try and level as high as I can with what I do, right? I make my own inks. I make my own tabori needles. I try to make my own tabori tools. You know, I draw everything. I try to freehand everything. I draw on paper. I don't draw on an iPad. That's just me, right? That's just how I get my sense of purpose and my sense of meaning and my sense of accomplishment out of what I do, right? I love that stuff. You know, I also make my own butter. I also, you know, milk my own cow and raise my own chickens because I want my food to be as traditional as possible and as healthy as possible. You know, I make my own ink, so I know what's in it. I know there's not a bunch of crap in it. I make my own needles, and I check them as I'm making them with an eye loop. So I know that they're all perfect and straight, because if you have one little barb on your needle like that, it can chew the skin up undetected. until it's too late and you notice you've made a bit of a hole in somebody and it causes hard healing. I was raised in the idea that you should always check all your needles with an eye loop, pre-packaged ones, when you're making them, when you're soldering them as you go. And I don't know anyone who has an eye loop anymore. I don't think anyone who started tattooing in the last 10, 15 years even owns an eye loop. So people are just open needles out of packages, popping open a cartridge, whatever you do with a cartridge, and then no one's checking the tips. So those needles could be barbed, could be chewing the skin up, wondering why they're having issues, right? So little things like that. The traditional way would be to check everything, check your tools, check your equipment, tune your own machines if you're using coil machines, right? So this aspect of tradition is, I'm not going to say it's religious, but I mean there's traditional cultures and traditional rituals that harken back to give you this feeling that you're part of something bigger than yourself, right? And for me, tabori is like that. Tabori, just the act of doing tabori is tradition. I have photos on my wall here of old masters working and stuff, and I feel that connection to what they do, and I try to honor them and honor the craft by partaking in this craft. Even though it's hard and it's breaking my body down and fucking up my joints and shit, I persevere, right? So I think if you're aspiring to do traditional stuff and you want to be part of this traditional thing, you need to, do as much as you can to actually honor this, right? So put the iPad over there, draw on some paper, learn how to make needles, right? If you're going to use a machine, maybe use a coil machine or something that is a little more technical, a little more mechanical, that you can participate, right, and have a connection to what you're doing, right? Because I tell you, there's nothing sexy or cool about watching big traditional tattoos being done with a wand, right? It just, for me, it's not my thing, not my thing. All the power to those who do it, not my thing, right? So, but yeah. So I guess in tradition as well, you've got the people that you revere. You have the masters that we look up to, the Horiyoshis, the Horitoshis, the Kuniyoshi woodblock guys, the Hokusai, Kiyosai, the lesser known ones, Hoke, Hiroshige. And you look at these guys, and these are the epitome of tradition. These guys' work has lasted the test of time. They've stood out, right? So you want to do things like them to try and maybe get a little piece of that magic, right? I mean, maybe if I draw like Hokusai, I will channel a little bit of what he was doing, right? And I'm not talking about burning or stealing his work. I'm talking about learning how to draw in his way, right? As many people have, as many famous artists since him have. And from that, they've developed their own style that we revere, right? So it's a building block thing on tradition. Like they say that, like, say, in a tattoo family with a koi, the master has his way that he draws a koi. And as his student or deshi, you will draw a koi the same way. You won't fucking alter it because that is the way of your master. And then maybe once you become a master, you might change something. You might change the way the eye looks, or you might change the end of the fins. And then you've taken your master's koi and you've made it into your koi. That's your iteration, is that little change. And then your student, your deshi, when he becomes a master or she becomes a master, will alter their little bit and add to their thing. And then over generations, right, you've got this tradition, but you can see every step along the way where something changed, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing, right? That's carrying on a lineage, right? So that applies to drawing. It could apply to how you attach your needle to a tabori stick in terms of, the way you roll the thread. I mean, I didn't have that stuff really taught to me properly. I figured out a lot of stuff for myself and kind of made it up as I went. So now I'm creating a tradition for my students, and they can copy me, and they can take it to the next level for their students 30, 40 years from now. That's the way I see it, right? Or the way you grind your sumi, or the way you make your pigment, or whatever the case may be. Building on a previous generation's way of doing something, right? And respecting that. You see all these new tattoo styles that come and go willy-nilly and crazy-looking dragons or crazy-looking this or that. And it's got no power. Like, it's popular for a minute. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. That'd be cool on a T-shirt or a sticker, right? Or maybe a poster in a teenager's bedroom. But it has no power. It has no purpose. It has no meaning. It has no connection to anything. It's just a thing, right? And that's what I love about traditional Japanese tattoos is that there's a connection to it. You can look at one of my dragons, and if you have the eye for it, you'll know where I referenced that from. You'll know what I was looking at when I drew it. And you'll maybe know what the person who drew the one I was looking at was looking at. And there's that lineage to it, right? And that's what's cool about it, is you're doing your own thing. You're not tracing. You're not even copying. You're being influenced by the past, and you're following a traditional lineage, right? And so that's where Japanese tattooing gets its power from. It's got the stories, it's got the mythology, but it's got the lineage of carrying on something that was done before you. So that's my take on tradition and traditional tattoos and how it applies. And there's a whole bunch more to this, but I'll keep it short today because my last few videos have been really long. And again, this also applies to how tattoos are done, right? So you've got the makiri, which is the edging, right? So when you see a chest plate like that, the makiri is the edging. It's a style of edging. So you've got like the straight edging, the curved edging, the dotty edging, right? You've got all sorts of different names for this stuff. And things are done a certain way. Have you ever asked anyone, why are sleeves like that? Why are there wind bars that come down, right? No one fucking knows. Well, some of us know, but no one asks. They just assume, right? Well, that's a traditional way of doing things. And everyone copies it. Some copy it well, some copy it very poorly, and some copy it in between. But very few people actually know why they're doing it. They just know it's the look, people like it, so I'm going to do it, right? But this is a good example of tradition, right? Being followed, a ritual being followed, where people don't know the origins and don't know any of the story and don't even know what they're doing. Why do Japanese tattoos have big solid backgrounds and they're framed off in this kind of way, right? This is all part of the traditional look that people adhere to, they're attracted to it, they like it, but very few people know the history of it, right? But they follow it. And again, some follow it, and okay, and some don't. And you learn from the masters that when I've taken my portfolio to Japan to show Horitoshi or Horiyoshi or any of the other guys I know over there, they're not judging the dragon or the phoenix or the koi fish. They're judging the background, because the background, the traditional background, is what makes a traditional tattoo. If the background is good, then it's a good tattoo. If the background is ordinary, it's an ordinary tattoo. And if the background is bad, it doesn't matter how good your dragon is. You take a beautiful dragon, drawn immaculately and perfectly, and you put a very poor Japanese background on that, it's a shitty tattoo. There's no way around it. There's no fixing it. There's no buttering it up. It's a shit tattoo, because the background, the framing is what makes it. That's the traditional part of it, right? So this is something to keep in mind, right? If you're aspiring to get or do traditional tattoos, you gotta learn to see, right? A lot of people have eyes like potatoes. They can't fucking see, right? Like if people come in and go, oh, I've got this traditional sleeve, I want you to do another one. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, that's not even remotely traditional, right? Because people don't know. It's people want this, they want this tradition, they want to buy into this history and this culture and this whole world that's bigger than them. But you have to learn a little bit about it. And especially if you're doing it to people, the last thing you want to do is realize you've been doing poor tattoos on people for years before you figure it out, right? So put the Pinterest page away, close the tabs, go buy some books, read, learn, study, draw some more, and figure it out, right? And then that way you can be part of the bigger traditional community. And you're not doing people a disservice by doing shitty tattoos on them, right? The only people I teach to tattoo are my students. I'm not here to, educate the world on how to do something, but I will educate you on why you should do something, right? It makes me sad seeing bad Japanese tattoos being done. I don't feel like, oh, yay for me, I'm doing it right and they're doing it wrong. It makes me sad seeing these poor people that wanted to get cool tattoos getting bodgy tattoos, right? I think we should all aspire to do what we do the best we can. And in that regard, I'm happy to help and push people in the right direction. I've mentioned a bunch of stuff in in this video that if you can take notes and go do some research, you'll find lots of information, lots of reference, and you'll be able to step your game up a little bit. And if you're a person that wants to get traditional tattoos, there's a wealth of information I've given you on how to find your way to that place. If you have any questions, any comments, hit me up down in the comments there. Hit me up in the DMs. If I can answer your question, I will. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is a very brief little thing. Like all my videos, I keep it light. I don't really go down deep rabbit holes. I try to keep it light and simple and easy and digestible. But if there's something in particular that you want to know more about, let me know in the comments and I can maybe do another video down the track exploring ideas a little more in depth. All right, guys, have a good day and I'll see you next time. Cheers.